Hello folks, welcome back to the channel. Is your Honda Snowblower engine surging, going up and down like I'm going to show you today how we can fix that, and we take off the carburetor and we're going to clean this carburetor step by step. Now I'm assuming I'll put a link in the comments and at the end of the video on a previous video on how to remove the carburetor from the Honda snowblower. By the way, this will work with any Honda small engine, whether it's a wood splitter, a power washer, any kind of Honda carburetor on a small engine. It's all pretty much the same. Now, we've spoken about this before on how to remove the carburetor first, and the reason why, the things you can do to make sure that it's a carburetor problem and not something else. Now, I'm assuming that you've already checked the fuel cap to make sure the vent is clean. If you take off the fuel cap and it stops surging, then you know it's the fuel cap. It could be a clogged fuel line. It could be a clogged fuel filter. It could be a vacuum leak between the gasket. There's a gasket here, and there's a spacer here with your elbow. It could be a vacuum leak, which would cause the surging. The way to tell if it's that, you spray some starting fluid or some carburetor spray while the engine's running in these areas. And if the engine goes up in RPMs, then you know you've got a vacuum leak. But let's say you've checked all that, you've done the in-frame carb cleaning, which we have a video on, which I'll post a link on that too. You've done the in-frame carb cleaning, and it's still surging. Now, in this case, this is when I take the carburetor off, and I'll take it apart and I'll clean it. Now, worst case scenario, you can put it in an ultrasonic cleaner if you have one. I know most of you don't have one, but most of the time, this type of cleaning will work. So let's get started on this. The first thing I do is I remove the sediment cup. You need a 10 millimeter wrench or a socket for this. Loosen that up, take this off. And I'm also going to tell you a couple things like if you have leaks. Now, sometimes the leak might be coming from here. If you look inside here, there's a little O-ring about the size of a quarter. And sometimes that needs to be replaced. If you get a Honda carburetor gasket kit, it comes in a package like this. It has all your O-rings, your bowl O-ring, and all kinds of neat stuff. You might want to get this if you have leaks in the carburetor. Now, here's the new one. If you have a leak in here, you can replace it. But first of all, I take out the sediment cup, and I look in here to see if it's dirty or rusty or whatever, and you can clean that out with carburetor spray. I use some gum out. Any kind of carburetor spray works. I use gum out with the straw. You clean that out. You can use a Q-tip or a small screwdriver to clean it all out. And that's the first thing you want to do. You put that aside. Then you remove your bowl. You loosen up. Here's your drain. You loosen up your mountain nut here. I'm using a socket to make it easier. Now, if you have a leak down here, if you notice there's a little nylon washer, it should be there. If it's missing, that's why it's leaking. When you get your gasket kit, you have a replacement nylon washer. So this is your mountain nut. You pull your bowl off. See how it comes off? It lines up. If you look inside the bowl, it lines up with the float, see? And then when you put it back on, you line it up like that. Here's your bowl O-ring right here. You want to inspect that. And if you buy that gasket kit, it comes with an O-ring. You can replace it if necessary. Sometimes this is hard to get out. You're going to have to use a pick or a very tiny eyeglass screwdriver or a brush and clean it all out. Clean it out very, very well before you put the new O-ring in there. Now you can remove the float. You pull out the pin, set it aside, and your float comes right out like that. Now before you do anything else, which is removing this is your air fuel mixture screw, which on this is a Honda OEM carburetor. It has a limiting cap on it. If you can see it, this cap stays on. It's set, the air mixture screw is set at the factory, and it's got two adjustments here. It's up and down. The proper way is up. Now, Honda did this because too many people are messing up this adjustment. So it's set at the factory. So I would leave this alone. There is a way to take this cap off, and a lot of people will try to force the cap off with some needle nose pliers or whatever, and they'll end up breaking the head of the screw. And this is like $17 to $20 to replace. So I suggest you don't mess with this. It's set at the factory. Now on the older carburetors or the aftermarket carburetors, it has a slot that you can tighten or loosen. So what I do is I get a screwdriver, and I want to make sure I know what the adjustment is. If you look at the Honda shop manual, it'll tell you 2 turns or 1 3/4 turns or whatever is the proper setting for this screw. Now, if you want to take the screw out and clean the passage, that's fine. But what I do is I'll tighten it all the way in until it's snug. See, 1/2 turn, 1 turn, 1 1/2 turns, 2 turns, 2 1/2 turns, 3 turns, 3 1/2 turns, 4 turns. I don't even know if this is right. Usually it's not this much. This is an aftermarket Honda carb. So I'll keep on turning it in. Usually it's about 2 turns, 2 1/2 turns when it's set. See, now it's set. And you don't want to over tighten it because then you can make some damage. So then I can pull it all the way out. I already know, let's say it's 2 1/2 turns or 2 turns. So I can pull it all the way out now. And now I can clean that passageway. Where is my flashlight? There it is. I can spray some carburetor cleaner or compress air in there and make sure that passageway is clean. And then when I put my screw, I want to clean this too. When I put my screw back in, I know how much I tighten it all the way. Tighten it all the way in. And then you back it out as much as when you found out. When you screwed it in and say it's 2 1/2 turns. If you're not sure, look at the Honda shop manual or look it up online. let's say it's 2.5 turns, then you would back it out 2.5 turns, okay? But most carburetors, the Honda carburetors, have a limiting screw, so I don't want to mess with this. Down here is your pilot jet. Now, before you take the pilot jet out, there's a cleaning that you can do. Here's your throttle plate. You want to make sure that moves freely. You want to make sure this moves freely, and this is your on-off. You want to make sure this turns on and off. Okay? And before you do take this out, you want to make sure, if you look in here, let's see if I can show you. Here's your throttle plate. Can you see those holes in there? There's a couple holes in there in the Venturi. You want to spray some carburetor fluid in this hole right here. So you put your straw in here and you spray, and while you're spraying, I'll make sure you're using safety glasses, folks. When you're spraying in here, did you see that? Did you see the carburetor spray coming out of these holes? You want to make sure that they're not clogged. Now, a lot of times, all you have to do is spray a bunch of carburetor spray or compressed air. You know, before I had an ultrasonic cleaner, and I was using compressed. I didn't have a compressor in the garage. I was using stuff that I got from Costco, compressed air in a can that you can use to clean your computer keyboards and stuff, and that worked pretty good. So you can use compressed air. You could use carburetor cleaner. I'd prefer carburetor cleaner. You stick the carburetor cleaner in there, make a good seal. Be pretty liberal about it. Spraying in these holes. There's another hole here you can spray, and it will come out. I don't think I've ever seen a clog in there that wouldn't release when you use the carb spray. And then you spray in the other holes. This hole goes all the way. These holes here are for the mounting, but you spray in the holes. You can spray in the pickup tube. This is called the pickup tube. And there's your main jet. I'm not sure if you can see that. That's your main jet. Now you can spray up here into your main jet, and you'll see the spray coming out of the top of the nozzle, the emulsion tube. Here's your seat for your float. See, when you take your float out, you want to make sure it's nice, and the rubber point is nice and pointy. And I've never seen a float that has gas in it, but you want to make sure there's no gas in it. Usually on other brands where they have a brass float or something, they might get gas in them. But this needle goes right in here into your needle seat. And sometimes a little bit of dirt can get in there. And if you have a problem with overflowing gas in your carburetor, it's because the float is not shutting off the gas. It could be a float that needs to be adjusted, or most likely there's dirt in here. So what I do, I spray some carburetor spray in there. You can see it coming out where the sediment cup is. And then use your trusty Q-tip, and you can use your Q-tip to clean in there. And then use some more carb spray to clean out some more, or some compressed air, see? Now, let me think, what should I do next? I should take out the main jet. Now, this is probably the most critical part of cleaning out a carburetor on a small engine is removing this jet. It's brass. It's very easy to damage. So what you want to make sure you have a carburetor, you have a screwdriver that will fit in there. Now here's your regular type screwdriver. See how it's flared right there? It's not going to fit in there. Let's see if I can show you. See, it's not fitting in there. So I took an old screwdriver and I used my bench grinder, or you can use a file, and I filed it down on the side. So you see how nice and straight this is? It's nice and straight. And the slot will fit perfectly in the slot in the brass jet. And this is really important, folks, because too many people are messing this up. They're damaging the slot, and they can't get the brass jet out. So let me see if I can do this. I have to do it by feel, actually. I want to make sure that the screwdriver is in the slot, and then I start turning it. Let's see if it's turning. Okay, I'm looking in that hole there. I can see the jets turning now. All right, I got lucky here. This is a brand new carburetor, so it just pops out. And this is called the nozzle or the emulsion tube. A lot of times this is stuck. You'll be able to get the jet out, but this little sucker will be stuck in there. So what I use is some liquid wrench penetrating oil, and I might spray some penetrating oil into the pickup tube and let it sit for a while and see if that will free it up. And a lot of times it will. Now, if it doesn't free it up, the emulsion tube's in there, it will stick. I'm going to show you. Can you see it there in the Venturi? Can you see it popping out there? Well, you might need to do a little bit of persuading here. And what I do is, after I've put some penetrating oil, I'll use a screwdriver and try to push down on the top. Or, where's my pick? What did I do with that? All right, here's my pick. I can put my pick in here. It's kind of hard to see. I don't have a light. But you use the pick end and you push the emulsion tube down from the top. And most of the time that will work. You might need some more penetrating oil. Most of the time you'll push it down just enough where it'll come out. Now when you've got your jet out, you want to get the flashlight, put it at the end here, and you can see, I don't know if you can see that, you can see the light coming through the main jet. A lot of times on an older carburetor, that jet might be clogged. So what you're going to want to use is these welding torch cleaners. I got these on Amazon, I think. Yeah, and you can find the smallest one. Usually, it's at the end here. You use the smallest one. Here it is, right there, and you push it up into the hole, and you clean out the hole. And then you use the next side up and push it through. And you can usually feel a little bit of resistance as you go up in sizes. And that's when you stop. And then you'll use some either compressed air, or you'll use some carburetor spray and spray. Okay? Now this is the little part that can cause a lot of problems. You see all these holes? You got 3 on this side, 6, 9, 12. And then you've got these tiny, tiny holes over here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if any of these holes are clogged, it's going to cause some surging. And sometimes this is usually, I've seen this on 1132s most of the time. This emulsion tube is clogged. You got 12 holes here. It might only be 2 or 3 holes that are clogged. So you use your torch cleaner, little wire, and you stick it through. You stick it through the other side. Let's see if I can do this. Okay? So you got 3 sets of holes here, and you do it for each set. And then the small holes, they're very, very tiny. Let's see if this will work in this hole. It just barely fits in there. So you can clean out these holes too. So what I do is I block the end. I'll block this part right here, and then I'll spray. And you can see the spray coming out of the holes. And then you can also put it up against the light. Put a light behind it or look up in the sun. And you can see, I don't know if you can see that, you can see the light in the holes. Then you know those holes are clean. Let's see if you can see them in the little tiny holes. Yeah, you can. You can see the light coming through the little tiny holes too. So you got 2 holes going all the way through. So you make sure this is well cleaned with carburetor spray and compressed air if you have it. Okay. Now what you can do, you set that aside. Okay, you clean this. Now you can take your pilot jet out, the idle jet, also called the pilot jet. Here's your one of your idle adjustment screws here. You see, here's your throttle, and you can, if you want more idle, then you just turn this screw in, and the backside pushes up against this part here and increases your idle. So here, you take this off. Okay. All right, we'll take that off first. Now there's a little, on most carburetors, it has this little cap on there. It comes right off. Here's your pilot jet. Get some needle nose pliers, or you can use a tiny screwdriver with a flat end, but I'd prefer to use needle nose pliers, and you pull it out. Okay. Now once you've pulled that out, let's see if I can show you. See that hole in there? There's 2 holes. There's one on the side and there's one on the bottom. Use your carburetor spray and clean that passage out. See, it's going to come out of the pickup tube. And then you can go at an angle there and clean out your side hole too. There's another hole in here you have to make sure that the gas is on, so it opens up that passage. And you can clean that out too. This goes to your fuel line to your gas tank. So you want to make sure all your passages are clean. And then you can either dry it with compressed air or just let it dry in the sun. So once you've done that, there's one other thing you want to check. You want to make sure that this is open. This is your pilot jet. And you take your torch cleaner, get your little torch cleaner here. Start with the smallest one first and stick it up the hole here. And you can see it. It's hard to see, but you can see the wire going through the hole. It's kind of easy. So I'll go up I'll go up a size, and I want to make sure that this hole is clean. A lot of times you're going to see this hole is clogged, and that's what's causing your surging. So you want to make sure that hole is clean. You can use some carb cleaner, put it in the end here, and watch this. You see the carb cleaner coming out of the side, these two holes right here. So give it a good dose, clean it out. Another thing you want to make sure, I forgot to mention, on this is called the pickup tube, where the gasoline gets picked up into. There's a hole on the side there. You want to clean that too. So put your straw in there, clean that out. And one more thing you want to do with your pilot jet, I have to use my little trusty flashlight. You see at the end there's a little O-ring. It's a 1 millimeter by 4 millimeter O-ring. And sometimes this is damaged. So you may have to replace that. And this is a brand new carburetor, so that looks perfect to me.